Welcome to Locked On Mavs, man. I'm so excited. We have the man, Iztok Franko. If you've been on Mavs Twitter, you know this guy. You know all of his pieces. You know his latest piece in D Magazine on Lukas Offseason. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Mavs season. I need all of his takes on Slovenia, Dallas, and I want to go to Slovenia one day, so I got to get some travel tips from him. Coming up next.
Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
The Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good! And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Welcome to Locked On Mavs. Man, what a fill-in for Nick today. As I'm so excited. I've been wanting to get Iztok on the pod for a while. The time differences right now, it's, we're working with 7 hours because Iztok here is in Slovenia. I'm in Dallas. When you first off, how long have you been writing about the Mavs?
About the Mavs, first, hi and welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you for welcoming me on the show. I have to tell you before I start talking that I was listening for this show for a long time, so it's got me through a lot of summers when this was the only show that had like a daily pod about the Mavericks. So waiting for free agent news in June and July, it was the show. So I was one of the originals on the Raccoon Squad, or how you call it.
Yeah. Thank you. That's so cool.
Good. And about the Mavericks writing. So it's been a year now. So last season, before the season, started working with Kirk and the team on the Mavs Moneyball. So then it started as, let's say, more like a part-time occasional thing. But then as the season progressed, we tried to do much more analysis. And in the playoffs, it was almost on a daily game basis. And now this season, in addition to the Moneyball, we started working with Mike Pilucci, who is start with a sports vertical at the D Magazine. So I'm writing for them, doing some analysis and some articles about the Mavericks for the D Magazine.
Yeah, so you started with Mavs. You're still with Mavs Moneyball. Still, you're doing D Magazine stuff now. And I remember reaching out to, I was just telling you this before we hit record, but back when you first started, I remember shooting Kirk a DM on Twitter, and I'm like, man, I don't know who Iztok is, but he is awesome. Like, I love, and it feels like every, I don't know, 2 years, there's like a new Mavs follow. That if you're on like Mavs Twitter, you're following any type of Mavs content, that, you have the list of people like you have to follow for that content. And I'm like, all right, here, you're the follow over these past 2 years of just following online. Also, obviously following your work. And we're going to get to your piece in D Magazine, talking to Luka's trainer and all of that. That's why I really wanted to ask you about. That was so cool and so good. But for you, okay, so you're in Slovenia. What part of Slovenia? What city are you in?
In Ljubljana, in the capital. But
okay. So
Lukastown.
Lukastown. So, okay, so when I think about, I'm so fascinated about the relationship of Slovenia basketball fans with Luka, because this is something for me, I don't have this as an American. We have all these players that, are born here, from here. The league is here, the NBA is here. So it's okay, we have all these players that we just kind of pick players we like growing up, or if you don't live in a city, you don't have a loyalty to a team. And so you just kind of have all these players. I'm so intrigued of is the whole country just rallied around Luka Doncic, of whatever Luka does, we are fans. We are Luka, when he comes home, it's Luka is the second coming of a Messiah type of, sports figure. How is that relationship?
Yeah, for me personally, and then I'll talk a little bit about the country. For me, I'm following NBA for a long time. So I remember when I was really young, so and by this, when I tell this story, the people will know how old I am. So I was watching my first NBA games with my father, and it was not on Slovenian television because they were not broadcasted back then. It was on Italian television, and they had this American commentator, Dan Peterson, who was coaching in Italy. and he was calling the finals between the Lakers and the Detroit Pistons in the late 80s. So this was like I was really young boy, and my father was explaining me about American basketball, because in Slovenia and before in ex-Yugoslavia, basketball was really the sport. So it was very well developed. And at that time, the American basketball started to get on the radar for us. And then I was following NBA all through the Jordan era. And the first Slovenian players started to come in the league. So there was some players before who were like sort of successful. I don't know, the real NBA junkies. Maybe we'll hear about Rašo Nesterović. He played on the Spurs title team. Then we had
big man, right?
Yeah, center. Always a role player. So Beno Udrih, he was like also on a title team. We have Boštjan Nagbar, and then Goran Dragic was basically, when he came in the league, he was like the first really, let's say, very good player. So he made an All-NBA 13th once and an All-Star team once. But it was never the same. So it was, basketball was more, people were following, but for example, Goran Dragic but it was mostly in the NBA basketball junkie circles. But with Luka, it's changed all the time. So every day where there is a game, they report it on the television. His interviews are here. So he's the first real superstar. And I would say a superstar, not only in the sports world, but I would say the first real superstar overall of a country, because he's really everywhere that you go, they know him. And it's, I think, like you said, a lot of news, a lot of buzz all the time. Now we have Dallas Mavericks organization put the billboards all over the town, so, and they open the court. So it's he's really a star. Yeah. So it's Slovenia's son.
Yeah. So when did you first hear about Luka? Like when was that first initial buzz? How old was he?
Yeah, I mean, there was some buzz, when he was young, and because I have some friends in basketball circles, so they were telling there is one really talented guy, and you would hear there is a guy who went to Spain because he was really good, and this should be something. But then I think we started to hear, or at least me personally, when he was 15, 16, and they were saying, look, this is a guy, he's 16, and he trains with the senior squad. And Real Madrid, it's like the squad, the team in the Europe. They're like one of the best, if not the best team, really well organized. So it was really surprising that there is this young guy, 16 years old, playing with the senior team and already playing some games. So this was when he really started to get on the radar. For me personally, because as I said, I was really following NBA. So the year before the draft, I watched almost all Real Madrid games. So really wanted to see how he plays. And it was a crazy season because Sergio Llull, who was the star, the point guard for the team, got injured, and basically Coach Lasso gave Luka the keys of the team, and they had an incredible season. So they won everything that they could.
Was that Ted Lasso?
No, it's Sergio Lasso, but I think Pablo Lasso. Sorry, but it's Coach Lasso for sure. Yeah, so Luka knows how to has that experience as well. And before that season, we also had the Euro Championship that Slovenia won, and that was basically for the, let's say, majority of Slovenians that Luka got on the radar, because he was like this young, funny character, funny guy who was playing crazy well together with Dragic and with the team. And because before, Slovenia had a lot of very talented teams in the European basketball, but they never get to the medal round. There was always like some really crushing defeat. And at that time, that was like a Cinderella story. So they went to the finals, won the finals. It was incredible. And that's, I think, when most of the people also here in Slovenia started to really know about Luka. And then with the draft and everything that happened in the NBA, then it's just exploded.
I know. I feel like that's when I'd briefly heard just from a few people in scouting international stuff of like, hey, there's this young kid at Real Madrid. He's really good. And that was like the extent like I had heard. But then it was that Eurobasket run that I was like, oh man, now I was like really introduced to who Luka Doncic was. Real quick before we take a break, have you gotten the chance to see the new courts? Did you get to see that, or what was the buzz around the city for that, and like the press conference with Kid and them in town and the extension and all of that?
Yeah, no, it's funny because when I was a kid, we played on that court, so
Really?
it was yeah. So not it wasn't the main place where I played basketball, and I also played football or soccer, how you call it. But we play there, so I haven't had the chance to see it. And also when Luka signed the contract, I was in Croatia at that time, but it was, as I said before, it's with the billboards and the courts. So
Yeah.
I think when Luka was here, it's really put also the country and the city on the global radar. So I think a lot of people take him as a global ambassador of the country and of the city.
You still play basketball?
Yeah, I try. So
Who
yesterday sorry.
What player would you say is like similar to your game?
No, I joke with the guys that we play with because I played a lot of basketball when I was younger, but then I don't know, we started playing more soccer. So, but outdoor soccer, which is like 5-on-5, which is very popular here. So we have like these recreational leagues and things like that. So then with an old group, we started doing pickup again, and my comparison is like 100% effort and defense and 0% skill on offense. So I don't know. The closest comp, I would say, I don't know, Frank on the Mavericks.
So. That's awesome. Okay, we're going to take a real quick break, and then we'll be back to talk about Iztok's piece in the D magazine about Luka Doncic and his offseason. Guys, I just want to say real quick, thank you so much for making Locked On Mavs your first listen. So many of you guys make this part of your normal routine on the way to work, or maybe you're at home, or whatever you do in the morning. So many of you guys listen to Locked On Mavs one of the first things in the morning. I just want to say thank you for that. Locked On Mavs is free. It's on YouTube. It's on any podcast platform that you listen to podcasts. And a lot of you guys listen to it first thing in the morning. And yeah, I just want to say thank you for that. This pod is also brought to you by Sleeper. Back in 2018, the fantasy sports experts at Sleeper realized that fantasy basketball was broken. Games were being won and lost based on players who had more scheduled games that week. It made like literally no sense. And I say this because this isn't just a simple ad read for a podcast. This has personal experience tied in this because I love fantasy football. I talk about football on this podcast a lot. Now, I used to play fantasy basketball, but I don't anymore. And that might surprise you because I love NBA, love basketball, but I don't play fantasy basketball anymore because I got tired of it. I got tired of it because I couldn't keep up with the daily stuff, daily changing lineups. And also the weekly format was dumb because when you play somebody, then one player Luka might have like 8 games, or just kidding, but he might have like, I don't know, 4 games in a week, but then you have another player on your team that has like 2 games. And you're like, why am I going to lose? Like, this is just an automatic loss if the other guy has more games in a week. This is where Sleeper comes into play, and specifically this new game mode called Game Pick. No, gone are the days that you're losing these matchups based off the game schedule. Gone are the mindless busy days at work. Actually, you're always going to have busy days at work, but when you're thinking about this, trying to figure out how you're going to win your matchup, you don't have to think about that anymore. You don't have to worry about it. In Game Picks, you pick 1 game per week for each player based on player matchups, home and away, opponent's defensive ranking, pace of plays, and more. Download the free app, Sleeper. Start a Game Picks league today, right before the season starts. This pod is also brought to you by DirecTV. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live. Another lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone. Then you got your neighbor's best friend's login for all the other stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all the entertainment you love without the hassle. And a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream. And it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports movies and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes. That's me. I'm trying to get remotes out of my kids' hands all the time. No need to buy another device ever again. Hey, I don't need to buy another device. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. Let's get back to talking to Iztok. Okay, So you dropped a piece, I guess, I don't know, last week at this point. This pod's coming out on Monday morning. So last week there was a piece that you had written about Luka's offseason, and you talked to his trainer there in Slovenia. And first off, like, how did that piece come to be? Why did you want to write that? And even in the first opening paragraphs of your piece, you're talking about how you met with him at, was it a restaurant, a coffee shop? How did that relationship come to be? Like, how did this story happen?
Yeah, first, before I get into piece, I need to say really thanks to the editor at the DMAG, Mike Pilucci, who edited that piece and made my strange words and unorganized thoughts into a nice looking story. So it was really a big help and great effort also from here. And the background was, I was looking at the calendar, when the training camp started. So there was a lot of things, okay, what Luka did, how the summer looked. And I started putting, like, just for fun, for exercise, the dates of what he did from June 6th, when the game 7 against the Clippers, when they lost that game, and until the training camp. When you put the dates down, it was crazy, because he went from June 7th, he had like a week off, and June 14th, he was already in the first training camp because Slovenia had to qualify for the Olympics. They didn't go automatically like the best countries. So they started training more than a month before everybody else did. So Luka had basically only 1 week off. Then they had a short training camp. They went to Lithuania. They won the tournament. And it was like everybody was so excited. They had like a party. It was like crazy. And then this is also what the trainer said. It was, oh God, now we had to start the new training camp for the Olympics, because nobody was really planning to do the whole Olympics preparation cycle. So when I was putting all this down, it was, to me, it would be cool if we would talk to the trainer. And then I also saw the Instagram photos, and I saw it was basically the trainer, Anže. He is also a trainer for the Slovenian national team, and he was a personal trainer, or a Slovenian trainer, who helped in the offseason Goran Dragic, So he worked with Goran for 5 years, and then I got his number, so we started talking, and he's really a nice guy. So we talked, like you said, we met and talked, and he explained a lot of cool things about how Luka's summer and the whole Slovenian national team summer was about.
And okay, Anže?
Yes, Anže. Like Anže Kopitar, the LA Kings hockey star.
Yeah.
He's the same. So he's Slovenian and has the same name. It's Anže.
Okay, Anže. So I didn't butcher it. How do you say his last name?
Maček.
Okay, Anže Maček.
Yes.
Let's go.
It means a cat in Slovenian, Maček,
Yeah. So if you could take away, like, I kind of want to talk about the piece, but not talk about all of it, because I want people to go read it. But if you could take away like one thing from that conversation with Anže that you were fascinated by the most, that you maybe learned something from that conversation, or your favorite part of that, what would it be?
I mean, the favorite part was just, one thing was the thing that I was explaining before. So how intense this summer was for Luka, from going to NBA, not only physically, but also emotionally. He went through like 3 training camps, 2 free picks. So from losing game 7 in the playoffs to qualification tournament to Olympics, and then started training for the new season. So it was really, he was talking a lot about this emotional and physical, basically, burden or toll that it took, and how to navigate through all this, and this was the thing. But the other thing that to me was really, you could see Luka is talking about this all the time, about the chemistry and how close, tight of a group the Slovenian national team was. And I think this helped them to get through all this, through the journey, through the summer. And also Luka, then, even after Olympics, when he trained together for part of his off-season program. He trained with Goran Dragic, his brother. So it continued, this chemistry. Although Goran wasn't on the national team, his brother was. So I think being as a part of this same setup, same chemistry, helped him to prepare and train, because basically, like I wrote in the piece, he had like 3 weeks off in total during this summer.
Yeah.
But this was like 5-6 days after he came from the US the first time. Then they had like 4 or 5 days break after they won the qualifying tournament in Lithuania. And then he had like 7 to 10 days after the Olympics.
Are you personally worried about this offseason? Like, are you worried that we could see, like, I mean, Luka, the whole conversation about Luka being tired in fourth quarters and just all of that. Like, are you worried that we could get an even like more tired Luka this year, or at the beginning of this year?
It's a great. I don't think at the beginning. My thing. Also, if you look at the videos, what we see now from the training camp, he looks like he's in good shape. Goran Dragic was explaining this after the 2017 when they won the Euro Championship. Well, the Euro Championship was even later in the summer. I think it was in September, and then it was the regular pre-COVID NBA season. So the NBA season started at late October. But he was talking a lot how it helped him be in really good shape. So early in the season, he was feeling really well. He had all competition. He was in all the time. But then I think at the end of the season, it started to show on him. So this is one worry. But I bet, I don't know, the Mavericks training staff, Finney-Smith, all the guys, I think they probably know about this, and they will need to somehow think about it. There is also one other distinction between what Goran Dragic was telling about. Luka is much younger, so he's still 22. But we'll see. And this is something to look as the season progresses. But I think for the start of the season, I think it will probably more help him than hurt him. That's my opinion, because he didn't stop training. He was basically stayed in shape throughout the summer and trained, and also had a lot of competition, a lot of really competitive games.
Yeah. So Goran Dragic,
yes.
is he gonna be a Maverick? I'm putting you on the spot right now. Iztok, Franko, are you saying that Dragic is going to be a Maverick?
I don't know. My fellow Slovenian friends all lost hope, but I don't know. It's difficult to say. I think yes, at some point.
I do too. Yeah. One way or the other, I think it happens somehow. Hopefully. Well, I'm assuming the Mavericks are the most popular team in Slovenia.
By far.
Is it possible for them to even be even more popular at that point?
I think if Goran joins, I think they will be even more. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. So make sure everyone go read his piece in the D magazine. I love the kind of towards the end where you guys were talking about just the genes that Luka has, and just it really gets kind of nerdy. I love all of it, of just his gravity, just like how he uses his body, and it's really fascinating. And they talk about those 3 weeks and how they trained. We put some pictures and stuff in there that they had shared on their social media and stuff. So, and how you mentioned Finney-Smith a while ago, that it was cool that there's been this back and forth between Finney-Smith and the Mavs with Angers and like his training and stuff in Slovenia. I thought that was really cool. So go read the piece in D magazine. And all your stuff. I'm assuming you have something new coming up in D magazine also.
Yeah, there should be a piece next week. So
let's go. So next week. So, okay, we got one more segment coming up after this break. We're going to talk about the roster, KP, get all of his talks, opinions, and takes on the team right now. Guys, I said thank you earlier for making Locked On Mavs your first listen of the day. Now, if you need a second listen of the day, our podcast platform has so many sports podcasts. If you're like me, you have a sports team in the NFL, and you might have a baseball team. If you're in Dallas, I don't know if the Rangers are still your team, but you know what? If you want to get caught up on the Rangers, we have Locked On Rangers. Bryce is doing a great job over there. You can do Locked On Stars. We have Locked On Cowboys that we just talking to those guys the other night. The Cowboys are kind of looking kind of good right now. What's your second listen of the day? We have you covered. We know what your first listen is. It's Locked On Mavs. Your second listen is something on the network, whatever other sport you want to listen to. This pod is brought to you by Built Bar. You guys know how much we love Built Bar. We've literally been talking about Built Bar for years because it's I don't think we can have favorite sponsors, but it's my favorite sponsor. Don't tell anyone that. But this isn't just an ad read because Nick and I both, we literally like buy Built Bars, order them to our house. Like we love the Built Bars. My wife likes Built Bars. It's a lot of healthy snack and like meal replacements. Like those things are normally nasty, but Built Bars are literally actually good, covered in 100% chocolate. Flavors, mint brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream, and more. We just got a new flavor in the mail the other day. Pretty dang good. It's in my fridge. I keep them in the fridge. Sometimes I take them as a snack during the day if I'm gonna have that. If you're like me, sometimes your schedule like backs up, and then you don't have lunch, and it's like 2:00. You're like, man, I haven't eaten anything yet. This is where Built Bar comes into play. Let me talk about how healthy they are. 130 to 180 calories, 17, 18 grams of protein, only 4 to 5 net carbs. Let's go. It's the official Built Bar also of the official bar of the U.S. track and field team. Go to built.com, use the promo code locked on, and you'll get 15% off your order. Use promo code locked on for 15% off at Built Bar. Built, not built.com. Let's go. Okay, you talked about the Slovenian team and the Olympic team. What do you think, Dallas? What do you think this Mavericks team can take away from that Slovenia team? What can they learn from that they maybe seen Luka? We talked about the team chemistry thing, but what can they take away from that team and apply it for this Mavericks team?
Yeah, this was one piece that I wrote for the magazine before. It was like, if there are any learnings or any comparisons that we can take. And okay, the chemistry basically is one of the things that Luka was talking, that J Kidd was talking about, even KP. So that was a really tight-knit group, but it's difficult to replicate this in an NBA season, because NBA season, it's a grind, it's like a job, and national team is you are like a college experience with your buddies where you train together, you're in a hotel together. It's like a bubble. And if you heard KP talked a lot about how their best chemistry was in the bubble because they had some of the similar setups. So that's not so easy to replicate, I would say. But the other thing, I think two things that I was curious. The positive one was for me because there is a lot of, at least for me personally, one of the things that I'm looking next season is if the Mavericks will play with more pace. Under Carlisle, they were the slowest team in the league for the last 5-6 years. So for me personally, was always a question, is this Carlisle, is this Luka, is his Luka's preference, or is it kind of a both? And in the Olympics, Slovenia was like the first fastest team in pace. They played really fast, really this up-tempo, attractive basketball. And before I talked to Anže, the Lukas trainer, I met also at one occasion with our national team coach, and he was talking about that, how they tried to push the pace, but it was difficult because they were training for so long, and at the end, it a little bit caught up with them. But that to me is interesting. For example, Jason Kidd was a coach or as a player who liked to play it fast and fast breaks or pushing the ball. So we'll see if they will be a little bit faster team. I don't expect them with Luka to be like Washington Wizards last year with Westbrook, so like the fastest team. But you could see, and I shared some of these clips on my Twitter, how Luka pushed basically the pace with some really nice kick-ahead passes, and this is, I think, that they can do. So this was one thing. The other learning is that we saw on the Olympics and we saw with the Mavericks last year was that at the end, it's difficult when Luka is the only guy who is creating everything. So Slovenia had similar problems that the Mavericks have. And at the end, teams were really focusing on him. In the quarterfinals against Spain, they played zone, 3 people basically on ball on Luka, almost the same game, the whole game. So this was one of the learnings that they need to figure out, the Mavericks. I don't know if they will this season, but they need to figure out in the playoffs if they can get this second guy who can basically be more than one level scorer.
Yeah. I mean, Dragic sounds amazing. That would be great.
Yeah, I don't think, although I love Goran, I don't think he is like the second star, but he could be the guy, he's good in pick and roll in Miami. If you watched, I don't know, the bubble run, he was basically the main guy. So they played like 2 kinds of offenses. When he was in the game, he was the main guy with the ball, with Bam in the pick and roll. So he was really good. As he matured, he also became quite a good shooter. So Yeah, he can be a guy who is also good passer in pick and roll. I think here is when he's a little bit better than Jalen Brunson.
Yeah.
Jalen is great at scoring, creating his own shot, getting to the mid range. But I think Goran is a little bit better at finding open guys, making plays in the pick and roll. And he's also, even though he's 35, I think he's always going 100%. He's like a Duracell bunny. So he goes, push the ball in transition, attacking. This is where I think he would help as well.
When Kid said the other day, I almost said Carlisle. I'm still getting used to this. When Kid said the other day about KP, that KP is going to start the season at the 4, and since then we've heard about Dwight Powell at the 5. Did it surprise you that KP is going to be, playing at the 4? So I don't know if he'll close there or whatever, but it like KP playing at the 4 compared to the 5. What are your thoughts on that?
This is part of the piece that I'm doing, so I don't want to spoil too much.
Don't spoil it then.
No problem. But yeah, it surprised me because I think the things that Kid was talking before in terms of how he wants KP to play with more freedom, to roll more in the pick and roll, to play the mid-range, to play in the post, it's much difficult together with Powell. Yeah, so because the spacing, the diameter of the court is completely different. So if you look at the data, and I did this as an analysis for my next piece, you can see that usage and everything historically, although this was under different regime, under Carlisle, but KP usage is much lower, which is obvious because Dwight Powell is a rim roller. So you need to use him in the pick and roll. And that's where KP's role as a spacer is really enhanced. So this was what surprised me. Also on the defense, I have my thoughts, and defense was something that I really tried to evaluate last year. So it was surprising, but let's see. Let's wait and see the first preseason games, the next game, how this will go. But to me, it was surprising.
Yeah, defensively is where my mind went, because I'm like, all right, one of those guys have to, they have to guard a 4, and is KP back to being a little bit more, lateral? Is Dwight guarding those 4s? I have my questions defensively, but like you said, let's see it in action before we really dive into it. Okay, one of my last questions here: who's a role player on this team that you're the most excited about this season? Let's take KP, Luka out. Let's go ahead and take Tim Hardaway out too. Who's another role player that you're like, hey, that's who I'm watching the most this season?
Yeah, the nerdy answer would be, because as I said, I'm really interested about defense, would be Frank Ntilikina, but I don't think he is the guy who will matter the most. So let's say the rational answer for me would be Jalen Brunson. I think he's also the guy who has, in my opinion, another leap in him. And if he makes it, I think it will really matter. So I think Jalen is the guy who I also think where Kid can have a big impact on him, because he was a point guard. So if he can give him more freedom. So I think then the Mavericks can have a third guy or another guy behind Luka who can attack, who can be scorer and creator. And this was one of the pieces I did last year was on Jalen. And I think what I liked really last year about Jalen was, because this is really difficult to do. We saw it with Josh Richardson, for example. It's really it's not easy to play with Luka. And Jalen had like 2 roles. So he could play like a backup point guard and have the ball in his hand. But then when he played with Luka, and at the end of the season, Carlisle closed a lot of games with him. He's a great spot-up shooter. He can attack the gaps. So I think that's it's really undervalued part of his game, because he's good in both kinds of setups.
Yeah. Well, Iztok, you're the man. Thank you so much for hopping on today. Guys, follow him on Twitter. It's just Iztok Franko, right?
Yes.
There's nothing else added to it. Iztok Franko on Twitter. D Magazine, you have a piece coming up this week. Mavs Moneyball, wherever you can find Iztok's work, you got to find it. Iztok, I really appreciate it, man. Have an amazing week.
Thank you, Isaac. Thank you for having me.